So with everything you're seeing, what do you think are some of the top issues that elk hunters should be aware of and paying attention to and be working on?
I think we always have to think about the basics.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mountain Tough Podcast. I am Dustin Diefendorfer, host and CEO, and I'm so glad that you are here. I love seeing you dive back into the show every week, and it is our goal every single week, every single episode, to bring you an inspiring guest that helps you with that mental toughness, helps you with that mindset, helps you with that mental health, so that you can add tools to that mindset toolbox so that you can stay dangerous and live always ready. If you're brand new to the Mountain Tough show, make sure that you do know and can use an exclusive code as a Mountain Tough podcast listener. This code gets you 6 weeks of free training on the Mountain Tough app. All our physical training, mental training, spiritual training, and nutritional training is on the app. And as a listener, all you need to do is use the code MOUNTAINPOD. So go to mountaintough.com, click Start Free Trial, enter the code MTNPOD, all caps, all one word. That's going to get you going for 6 weeks for free. Shifting gears now to today's guest. On the show today, we have a great human, a great partner of ours, being from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. We have their Chief Revenue Officer, Steve Decker. Steve is over in Missoula at the RMEF headquarters, and he's been with the RMEF organization for a long time, going full-time in 1997. He is now over there leading and running the RMEF organization. We're going to get into the history. We're going to get into how the organization got founded, and we're going to get into why conservation is hunting. Such a major, major topic. And as the Mountain Tough community and as hunters, how we need to be aware and understand how conservation works. So please stand by for my conversation with Steve Decker. So has RMEF been in Missoula the whole time?
No, so would have started in Libby, Troy. My father's one of the four original founders. He was out of Libby, and then Dan Bull, Bill Munson, and Bob Munson were all in Troy. They all went to the same little church together, and that's really kind of where this originated. So started in the Libby, Troy area.
Oh, wow.
And
what year was that?
1984. So would have been incorporated May 14th of 1984. So we just turned 41 last month as an organization. If you recall, last year was a pretty big 40th anniversary celebration.
Yeah.
So it really didn't matter where it was. Those first 4 years were pretty lean. Trying to get something like this off the ground. I was 14 at the time. And Bob's children, my dad's children, we all got kind of enlisted to do whatever we could in those early days. But it was pretty lean and pretty tough sledding. In 1988, the decision was made to move here in Missoula. So our headquarters were over on Broadway. Was the old Westmont tractor sales and repair place on Broadway. Moved in there. And then in 2006, we moved into this facility that we're in now, which is on Grant Creek, just the other side of Missoula.
Man, that's pretty wild that it's, Montana founded, Montana based all the way back from 84. I'm sure in those early years, there was only a handful of other conservation organizations out there.
There were, we all if you look at the critter specific groups, I think we all look at Ducks Unlimited as kind of the grandfather, been around the longest, kind of set the format for what these organizations look like. And really some of the basis of what started the Elk Foundation was Foundation for North American Wild Sheep existed, which we know now as the Sheep Foundation. But Dan had picked up a FNAWS magazine, Dan Bull, brought it back, and they were after church visiting, and the idea came up that, there's all these groups for ducks, there's groups for sheep. Why not elk? Like from folks in Northwest Montana that just lived elk hunting. There wasn't anything really dedicated to this iconic species. So that's where the idea started, but it was soon learned that the idea was a lot easier than applying it in practice, like putting something like this together. None of the founders were of great means. It took some help from banks and some other folks along the way to really get it launched. But again, the first 4 years were really, really lean. And really what put the Elk Foundation on the map was in 1988, the Rob Ledford Wildlife Management Area, as we know it today, down out of the Madison.
Yeah,
18,000 acres came up for sale. And, Bob was kind of the riverboat gambler really after the first few months. It was really just Bob and my dad. Yeah. My dad was more conservative and a little bit more business oriented. Bob was the gambler. Bob committed to us, the Elk Foundation, completing this transaction. It was $500,000 at the time, but 18,000 acres. And it really came down to the 11th hour, did not have the money to complete it. Anheuser-Busch stepped in, wrote a check, and got it done. And that's when people, I think, really, and if you listen to the stories, that's when people said, hey, this group may be serious. They may be for real. And things really did start to happen after that.
Yeah, just a mega traffic corridor for a lot of elk coming through there.
And if you look at how the landscape has changed around that over the last, what is that? It's coming up on 40 years. A lot of development. Ted Turner owned the Snowcrest ranches right next door there. It's big winter range. A lot of those elk out of the Centennials. It was a really important piece. It was highly developable. And, back then it really was about habitat. In fact, Jack Ward Thomas, in the day said, if you keep it about the habitat, you'll never go wrong. Like that's without habitat, everything else is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So for the first couple decades, at least, that was the major focus of the organization.
Buying lots of land too, right?
Well, yeah, permanently protecting through acquisition is one of the strategies we use. Often, putting protections in place and then conveying it. We don't like to own land long term. We're not a land management agency or entity. So others are better equipped to manage, whether it's a state agency, sometimes federal agencies. Obviously, they're designed to manage larger swaths of land.
Got it. So you're handing it over, but it's fully protected at that point.
Yeah, and even sometimes it stays in private with conservation buyers. And we like to ensure that there's public access attached to it long term, even in perpetuity when possible. We have a big one coming up in Nevada that I'm pretty excited about. It's a ton of checkerboard. And when we're done, it will all stay in private. It'll have permitted access, but it resolves a ton of checkerboard ownership for a really, really critical migration corridor for mule deer. Elk as well, but this is the second largest mule deer herd in Nevada. And without this migration corridor, if it were to get fractured, it would be devastating to that herd.
Wow, that's amazing. And what have you seen, shifting gears a little bit, over your whole entire time at the RMEF organization? What has the kind of the state of the union been on elk, the actual elk populations across the country?
In our time as an organization, the number of elk in North America have doubled, more than doubled, actually. Whether we had everything to do with that or not, I don't know, but I certainly think the Elk Foundation helped facilitate that. Certainly, the reintroductions to eastern states, if you take, originally Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, bolstering the Pennsylvania herd, Michigan, Arkansas, there's a number of eastern states now that actually allocate hunting opportunities. Kentucky has more elk than they say. I think there's a lot of elk in Kentucky.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
I think they say 10,000. I think it's north of that. I think they're like now the 7th or 8th largest elk state in the country.
And when you first started, were elk numbers pretty poor? Were they pretty kind of dismal? Did we think we were running into some
total
problems?
North America? I think it was under 500,000, and there's over 1.1 million now. So that's a pretty big swing in 40 years.
Yeah, that's a big swing. Yeah, a guy I was talking to on the phone this morning, he had a trail cam picture of an elk in Kansas.
Yeah, it's amazing where elk will get to. And there's
Mm,
Nebraska, Kansas have some small pocket herds there. West Texas has a small pocket herd.
wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And how about the Rocky Mountain West with, the increased population, the increased urban sprawl? We have the wolves, the grizzly bears. How do you feel kind of in 2025 things are looking?
It's complicated now. There are places, if you go to my hometown, Northwest Montana, Libby, Montana, we had a lot of elk when I grew up. Now all
Mm-hmm.
the elk are really relegated to private lands in the bottom. And if you look at the dynamic there, it's predators. We have grizzlies, we have wolves, we have mountain lions, all which are very major predators. We have a lack of active management on our national forests, so a lot of that habitat has become degraded. There's a lot of weeds. It's not that quality of habitat that once existed when it was better managed. If you go to central and eastern Montana, there's places where we're far over objective. We
Mm-hmm.
have more elk than what the state wants to carry in those management units. So I would say, it's just more complex. There's pockets of areas of concern for the lack of elk or the distribution of elk. And then in other areas, we have more elk than we know what to do with.
Mm.
And as you know, and if you ask over my career what has evolved or changed, the complexities associated with not only elk but really all the species, access for quality hunting opportunities, it wasn't as complex in the 90s, certainly in the
Mm.
80s. It's gotten more political. There's more factions and more division. Even
Yep.
amongst us as a group of hunters, it's just become a lot more complicated.
There
The,
is a lot of
the
variables.
days of Jack Ward Thomas, habitat, I long for those days because we were focused, and we still do that, and we're still focused on those things. We just have all of these other things going on now that make it just more complex and harder to navigate.
I
And
bet.
there is no
Yeah,
perfect answer. There just is not.
there isn't. Yeah, you got a lot of variables with the, private land, lobbyist groups. You
Yep.
got a lot going on.
Yeah, and really, if you look even just post COVID, the strain on our public lands, we have a bigger diversity of users using public lands more. Like we're kind of loving them to death if you want to really get to it. I look at places on the Kootenai National Forest, around the Cabinet Mountain Wilderness, where I spent a lot of time growing up. I go by trailheads where I would know the car that was parked there. Now
Mm-hmm.
there's 50. Like that's a lot of people all the time.
Yeah.
Kootenai Falls, we used to go there in high school and drink beer. Now, and we'd be the only people there any day of the week. I could drive by on a Tuesday in the summer, and there's 100 cars parked there. It's just
Wow.
crazy.
That's crazy. And that's happening in Colorado, Utah,
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
And when did the slogan around hunting is conservation start kicking in for RMEF?
It's funny you asked that because I was just looking. That's well, we trademarked it just because we felt like it was really truly testimonial.
Yeah.
Hunting is conservation in so many ways. We launched that 25 reasons probably 15 years ago. Is when we really started to talk about hunting as conservation and releasing those stats from all of the species that have been recovered through hunters' efforts, the investment through Pittman Robinson, the investment through groups like ours and others. Hunters really are the driving force behind conservation in North America. It's by far, in my opinion, the greatest conservation success story on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've used it for about 15 years and we continue. We're actually kind of going through a whole review of that and want to relaunch it and keep it out there in people's minds. I think for hunters, when you encounter people that don't hunt, I don't try to convince anti-hunters because they're already convinced, but when we can articulate to the broader public the benefit that hunting has on wildlife management and conservation and why we have the spaces that we do, the animals that we do, because hunters are the one investing in the management.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really good information to equip the broader hunting public with.
It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, your guys' tagline that you trademarked, I can remember a handful of times over my life on just how much that slogan impacted me, and then how much that slogan impacted my ability to articulate to someone why hunting is so important. And it's exactly like you said, when you run into someone who isn't an anti-hunter, but someone who's on the fence or just has never hunted before, and they don't quite understand it, when you can explain to them that hunting is conservation, you see kind of that light bulb go off. You see it start to click. You see it start to make sense, especially when you look at the organizations that are protecting all of this wildlife are consumed mostly with hunters, and the hunters are doing all the work to make sure that that animal thrives.
Yeah, our membership, about 98% hunters.
Wow.
It's not like half and half. It's 98%, pretty consistently.
That's wild. I was wondering about that, how that percentage split was, because you probably see the same thing with like Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever,
Yes.
Wild Sheep Foundation.
Yeah, I think all the groups are pretty consistent, at least in that high 80s and above, that are hunters, supported by hunters. But hunters kind of have a legacy of supporting conservation. This is an extension of what they already do by purchasing their licenses, by supporting the agencies, the state wildlife agencies. I think it's just in hunters' DNA, because we are extracting. It's almost human nature then to give something back. You feel this obligation. And, as someone that's now getting longer in the tooth in life, I feel more compelled the further I go in life. I look back at all the great hunts that I've had, all the great opportunities. I'm even more compelled then to give something back. So, future generations can have that same experience or something close or similar to it.
Yeah, for sure. Did you know pretty early on as a kid that you'd wind up working for RMEF?
Obviously I've always had an affinity to it. I grew up, I was a freshman in high school, I think, when my dad came home and said that they had started this Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And in those early days, I still vividly remember a couple of, disagreements with my mom and dad, who were engaged to be married after high school graduation. They're still married today, 82 and 83 years old. I do remember my dad put in my oldest brother's college fund to print and issue a bugle. And my mom was not happy, obviously, about that. And that resulted in a little bit of a dust up, but at the end of the day, it all worked out. I went to college. I wrestled in North Idaho for a year, and I learned pretty quickly that I was going to either be better at studying or be a really good wrestler and finish college without a degree. So I came back to the University of Montana, and my first semester here, I interned in our visitor center. So when I wasn't in class, I was getting a little bit of money on the side by just working in the visitor center. And I did that through college. I left for about 4 years, and I did miss it. And so I came back in 97. I've worked here consistent since 1997.
Wow.
So it was kind of a calling, yeah.
Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app. And there was a handful of years there you got to work with your dad?
Yeah, well, my dad owns a logging company, so I grew up in that. The 4 years that I wasn't here, I did some stuff for him. But so my father's always served on the board, so he's never actually worked as a staff person within the Elk Foundation, but he's always been on the board of directors and part of that governing side of it. So I've interacted with him over several decades on that capacity for sure.
Wow.
And I went into the field. I actually, in 1998, went to Canada. We had a Canadian operation, and I covered Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Northwest Ontario for us for 2 years. I lived in my pickup, and then came back to South Dakota and worked my way through the field and came to Missoula and headquarters in about 2004.
That's awesome. And do you have kids?
I do not. No, been married since 2000. But we have a spoiled lab that's as close as we got to a kid.
Those are good kids also.
Yeah,
for sure.
Sometimes it acts like one.
So with everything you're seeing, what do you think are some of the top issues that elk hunters should be aware of and paying attention to and be working on?
I think we always have to think about the basics, and the basics to me are that foundational. If we don't have habitat, if we don't have places for elk, deer, antelope, moose on down the line, if there's not places for them to exist, everything else is out the door. We can stop the conversation. We're very fortunate in America to have the public lands that we do. We still have a lot of open, managed private lands that help sustain public wildlife as well. I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that they are still private lands. We got to work with people, not at them, and look at things more holistically. We tend to dive into issue rat holes, I think, and sometimes maybe driven by self-interest and maybe not looking at totality all the time. And it's really hard because we are driven for, what's in our interests.
Mm-hmm.
But these are really complex issues. I think they vary by state. We just see different challenges from a management perspective in different states. And I don't know, again, if there's singularly some issue. Like we just came off of a couple of weeks of freaking out over public lands being sold.
Mm-hmm.
I compliment and commend Ryan Zink. He stepped up and said, no, that's not happening. And it was removed and we move on. Now, when does that happen again? In what context does it come back? We're pretty clear in our position on we support public lands. We support access, and we probably do as much as anyone in improving and creating access opportunities for hunters. I think we're north of 1.3 million acres that we have impacted positively for access. So that's another compelling issue is, okay, we've got the habitat. Can we access it? Access is a really critical component to people caring about those lands and being engaged in them. So yeah, it's a really, it's a deeper question than we probably have time for today.
For sure.
I always fundamentally, for myself personally, I go back to the land and the habitat. If we take care of that, then we can argue about whether we're going to use a rifle, a bow, what time of year and how long, and how many cows and how many bulls, et cetera, et cetera. That all gives us the opportunity to have those arguments.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, I think traveling around the world, the little that I've gotten to do, but I've been fortunate to go to some really cool places. But you spend some time trying to do any hunting in Europe, any hunting in Africa, any hunting in Central Asia. There's there's some really cool mountain hunts out there, and there's some really good opportunities. But a lot of times on those adventures, you just instantly get this overwhelming gratitude for the public lands that we have in America. And no other country that I've seen has that. And it's such a special gem. And once you kind of realize that, we have to do everything we can to protect that.
Right. Yeah. And, I think we also have to care for it. And I think, when you look at the evolution of our public lands, it disappoints me to see the amount of noxious weeds, to see the amount of massive wildfire. Like, it's really degraded, I think, from what it once was. Now, there was probably a period of time where extractive activities were aggressive and too much. But I think there's got to be a balance between taking care of those public lands and ensuring that they provide value to wildlife, value to people that recreate on them, and finding a balance. And I believe it's incumbent upon us to manage those lands effectively. And we as an organization support active management of our forests, of our public lands, because we think it's our responsibility to steward those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a stewardship thing for
It
sure.
is.
What do you usually articulate to running into a hunter, even an elk hunter, that's not a member of RMEF yet? It's an interesting question for me, just because I think about like our circle of people that we run around with at Mountain Tough, and our friends that are, a lot of them are born and raised in Montana, and so everyone that I know that's close to it, we've been around RMEF our whole entire lives and our whole entire hunting journey. But now you have this, what we're seeing is this real popularity for backcountry hunting. And what I heard is, nationally hunting is going down in numbers. So maybe your like Iowa farm kid is hunting as much as they used to. So nationally it's down, but backcountry Western states is way up, the popularity of backcountry elk hunting. And so we're seeing that in the amount of non-residents that are looking for that Montana tag, that Idaho tag, that Colorado tag, which is awesome, because I know that adventure is going to change their life, and I know that adventure is going to lead them to be a conservationist. But there still must be a bunch of hunters and elk hunters that still aren't members or still don't quite understand the conservation picture.
Yeah, and obviously in my role, I pitched the Elk Foundation as, I think you should support us. I know how seriously we take every investment from our members, be stewards of that money to have good outcomes. And I think our reputation speaks for itself on the what we've accomplished. But in the grander scheme, and just a general conversation with someone, I will certainly reference what I think are the merits of the Elk Foundation, but ultimately I just say get engaged and support something. Support something conservation oriented. There's a lot of great groups out there. And I think for that to last and stick, the group has to like reflect what your interests are, reflect what your values are. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to support a cause. And then that journey in life, I think people may come to it at different points in their life when they feel that obligation or instinct to give back from something they've, again, extracted from over the years. The Elk Foundation is not perfect. We've made our mistakes. I think we've continued to stay as humble as we can, focused on the core mission that we have as we can. I come in here every day and ensure that we stick to that. But that's not to say there aren't other really great groups out there that may be a better fit or right for someone. I just say simply support something. Pick a group, support it, be active, and help influence positive outcomes for something that you've actually extracted enjoyment and pleasure from.
Yeah, something that aligns with your passions.
Yeah.
And part of what you're doing too is helping make sure that the hunting heritage is passed down to future generations. What kind of work are you doing there?
Yeah, like we mentioned, you and I talked earlier about outdoor class. I think hunting has a bunch of natural barriers. So I grew up, my father and my grandfather early, but then ultimately my father taught me to hunt. I tagged along. I learned everything I know in elk hunting, deer hunting from them. Not everybody has that same kind of opportunity. We see a lot more adult onset hunters. They just are looking to get in. But, it's things that are instinctual to us that grew up hunting. People like, what caliber do I use? What's appropriate camo? I don't want to show up in a marsh camo to an elk camp. Like, all of these kind of barriers that we've created that we don't even really think about, but even just the fundamentals of how to go out and be successful. When you take the responsibility of harvesting an animal, that's taking a life. It's a responsibility. You have to take as much of that back, consume it, and be as efficient, ethical, and effective in that as you can. So I think outdoor classes probably our leading program today on helping people guide them not only from getting started, but then actually honing the craft and becoming more effective, more efficient, and even maybe more ethical in the long run. In that responsibility that we take in going out and harvesting and coming back with hopefully protein to consume.
For sure. Yeah. And you guys have done just a phenomenal job with that. It's a resource like no other. And I think about that a lot because, I learned archery hunting from my dad, and we were starting to chase elk with our bows when I was 14. And so I've been chasing elk around with a bow for over 30 years, and that's a lot of life lessons. That's a lot of mistakes. That's a lot of blown setups, blown calls, not setting up my camp right, not processing my meat right, and you're just learning hard lesson after hard lesson after hard lesson. And so at first, when I saw the trend of adult onset hunting, for me, I had a little bit of like territorialism around it. I was like, this guy needs to learn those hard lessons on his own and kind of put in that time. But you are right. If you don't have that mentor, or if you don't have that person that's going to take you under their wing and teach you, like, especially about elk hunting and mountain hunting and backcountry hunting, that's a big mountain to overcome completely on your own. And outdoor class has really handled that in such a beautiful way. I mean, you have subject matter experts. You got Corey Jacobson in there, you got Randy Newberg in there, you got Remy Warren in there, and they're teaching you calling, setup, wind, everything you could think of. So
John Barklow, survival, mission backcountry stuff, and we're building that out. So it's going to take us time to we have Mountain Tough in there, being prepared physically to go out and take on this challenge. Those are all critical components. It's in its infancy to what it will ultimately be. It takes time, really. We want to be methodical about providing the best content that we possibly can. Right now, we're rebuilding the University of Elk Hunting that Corey did back in the mid 2015, 2016. A lot of dated, some PDF material, trying to get all of that digitized video so it goes well on that Vimeo platform. In fact, we just dropped the first 3 modules. We'll have 9 modules out before hunting season, and that's all that really pre-elk season stuff. We're excited for that. That's 120,000 words like the physical training stuff Mountain Tough is going to take for us in that University of Elk Hunting. We got Corey in there. We got Randy in there. Or Remy with some of the archery stuff. So really building it out into really a more robust experience for the user.
Such an incredible resource. Yeah, just taking that learning curve and cutting it down and really increasing your time to get in the field.
Yeah, I've hunted elk since I was 12 years old, and even in elk camps prior, I can't say I've ever been that good at it. But I just, as part of this process, went through the entirety of the University of Elk Hunting again. And every time I go in, I learn something else. It's kind of like golf. I don't think you ever perfect it. You just keep trying to get a little bit better all the time. And elk will keep you humble. I know that.
Yeah, for sure.
They've done a good job with me.
Yeah, they'll definitely keep you humble. Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big, big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long, long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food, and they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops, a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at mountainops.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code Mountain Tough, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at mountainops.com. That's amazing you guys did that, because that's an innovative, unique way to do conservation. You know, to do conservation through making sure there's more hunters out there, making sure hunters are prepared. That's outside the box, but it's a really cool way to make sure the heritage continues.
Yeah, and even a little deeper, if you look at organizationally our membership structure, this is something I'm working on right now. Outdoor class adds for us a new value proposition of engaging with the organization. So the traditional model of membership, as I look to younger generations, I don't think they think of things in that same context or in those same terms. I think they're more maybe amenable to subscription based, which essentially our membership is a subscription to our magazine. Outdoor class is allowing us to add more benefit to the consumers that are engaging with us and supporting us. So I think it's kind of, if you just want to look at it from a business perspective, it's a little bit of a new value proposition in supporting our organization. We can deliver bigger, broader value to those that engage with us. They're getting something from it, but they're also contributing to something that we can then turn and continue to bring our mission forward. So I think it's a good, fair exchange.
I think so too. Yeah, you're bringing in that new audience and kind of tailoring a little more to their learning style.
Right.
Is RMEF, are you guys one of the largest conservation organizations in North America?
Yeah, if you define conservation, because there's some other groups out there that I wouldn't say are conservation groups that are kind of large. Ducks Unlimited is the largest, I think, by membership, and they should be because of their age. They're now generational in so many ways. we're just starting at our age in the, at 41 now as an organization, we're just starting to become generational, but we're certainly in that category of conservation groups. Yes, we are one of the, I would say, in the top couple largest in the country.
And when you think about, like, if I want my kids to be able to elk hunt and my kids' kids to be able to elk hunt, how do you feel like we're doing on that trajectory?
Yeah, I think hunting is in as good a place as it's been in a long time. I think COVID brought an awareness. That's where we talk about this decline in hunting. In many ways, we've kind of seen a rebirth or re-engagement. People taking a different look on how they source their food. I think COVID and supply chains, every hunter I know, when they were freaked out about grocery stores not having stuff on the shelves, like, no, I got a freezer full of elk, I got a freezer full of deer. That kind of resonated, and we kind of saw a little bit of that anyway, going into that kind of local war movement. But people taking responsibility for the food that's on their table. Hunting is a phenomenal way to really get as clean a protein as you can find. And so there is, I think for the foreseeable future, hunting is in a good place. I think we have to sort out some of the complexities, especially as you alluded to in the West. I think we're seeing some trail crowding. I think we're just seeing more people on the mountain. I think some states are actually hunting for longer periods of time. It's causing some issues with dispersion and where elk specifically are spending time.
Yeah.
So, I still I see a good future for hunting, but I also think we all have to continue to think about it and be cognizant that it's something that could go away if we don't steward and take care of it.
Yeah. And related to that, are you always encouraging RMEF members to, like, participate boots on the ground on habitat projects when they can?
Yeah, our volunteers are amazing in that regard. We have the last I saw was 28 or up to 30 volunteer hands-on project opportunities this summer across the country, in the East as well. A lot of our more active Eastern states are putting those together. And yeah, it's an incredible experience. It's an opportunity to go out and get your hands dirty and do something positive for conservation. There's a listing of those opportunities on our website. And we're adding to those all the time. And that sweat equity goes a long way. You're not always having to write a check to get fence removed, to get a water development implemented. We can put people on the ground out there and create a really cool opportunity to have that conservation firsthand, hands on the ground, and accomplish something. So we're trying to leverage more and more of that, in fact.
Yeah, those projects are amazing.
Yeah.
Getting out there, seeing that elk country, moving some of those fences, cleaning up the area, creating different water sources. You really kind of see how the whole system works when you're out there.
Yeah, and it's gratifying. Like, you feel good at the end of the day. You've left something positive, better than you found it.
Yeah. Do you see some younger generation people wanting to get college degrees so that they can get in the conservation world as their career?
Yeah, we do. In fact, I can't really talk about it yet, but we're going to announce something here very soon that involves a university and a program. It's around hunting and conservation. I would stay tuned. There's some pretty cool things that are going to happen here in the next couple of months. I just don't want to get over my skis in talking too much about it, but we see, from interns in our magazine to just the folks that are applying for positions with us. Some of the faces we see with some of the management agencies, there is a good, sincere, and robust interest in conservation and wildlife management out there.
Mm-hmm.
Even in our volunteer ranks, we're seeing it. College level chapters that is a little bit different format than our normal chapter system, but in allowing them opportunities to actually have more experience than just fundraising, like actually having some on the ground experience and getting a different connection to how that works. But yeah, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. And I imagine it's an extremely gratifying career.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Without question.
Seeing those populations come back and seeing those populations where there wasn't elk and elk starting to show back up, it's got to be amazing.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things is an organization that I've been involved with. When I was working in Canada in 1997, I actually went to Elk Island National Park, which was an elk facility. Those elk, we treated those elk for travel, so some inoculations and some things. I was just there helping, but those elk were the ones that they actually transferred. Were the first elk to step foot off of the trailers in Kentucky, where elk had been absent for over 100 years,
Wow.
which was just mind blowing. It was incredible. We were still kind of an infant organization at the time, and you start to think about like putting elk back on the ground in the East was a big deal. It changed a lot of things out there for the better. Restoring a species like that to that place was maybe one of the high points. There's been several over the years, but that was a good one.
Man, yeah, that had to be incredible. It reminds me of like, the North American history of the bison is really fascinating, and the history there is crazy, where there's estimates that at one time North America had 40 to 60 million
Yeah.
bison roaming the country, and at one point that number went down to 300.
Yeah.
300 left out of 40 to 60 million is hard to even wrap your mind around, hard to even believe.
Right.
But then I think the 300, I believe some of them went up to Canada, to Elk Island, for the
Yep.
population to start to be restored.
Yeah.
And so the way that, populations can disappear in front of our eyes if we handle it incorrectly, and in the way that we can restore them if we do the right work, it's crazy, because that's hard to believe, the 40 to 60 million number, and it's also so extremely sad, because it's like this big, beautiful animal and this protein source that's just sitting here equipping the whole country. We almost massacred and eliminated every single one of them. And so really keeping our eye on the big picture and the long picture of how all this stuff plays together when it comes to conservation is really critical.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the philosophy that no resource is unlimited. Even if 40 to 60 million seemed unlimited at the time, we proved that what was perceived as an unlimited resource was limited. And I think we always have to be cautious of that and conscious of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, because you can get a skewed perspective on it.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have a lot. You have a lot going on, and I know there's a lot more in the future. I know there's some new construction going on. There's a lot of new stuff coming for outdoor class. You guys are just rocking and rolling over there.
Yeah, we stay busy. Visitor center is under construction right now. We've got some things that hopefully will be exciting announcements around outdoor class in the next month or two. We've got this other program that I alluded to, more of research science based, kind of a partnership that we'll be announcing. We've got this really great project in Nevada. It's called Windermere. I can't talk too much about that yet either, but definitely a really cool access project that benefits mule deer and elk and pronghorn. Going to be really cool. And we've got more of those coming too. But yeah, we stay pretty busy. We try to.
Yeah. And when can people expect to be able to swing by when they're going through Missoula and see the new visitor center?
I think August is our target date. So I believe early August we should be back. The visitor center's open. They want to stop. There's still part of it is getting a facelift, and it's going to be really cool. A lot more kind of modern, more interactive displays.
Mm-hmm.
But we are still open for business down there. There's still the retail shop, a lot of the hunting heritage stuff. The big heads are still all out and viewable. So don't stop. Don't miss the stop just because we're under a little bit of construction too.
Yeah. Yeah. And the new one will be a completely new facility.
Yeah, that we redid the retail and kind of the west side of the visitor center a year ago. We didn't want to close it all at one time. So now we've kind of divided it, and now the east half of it's getting done as quickly as possible.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know it's a cool place to stop, and it's a great thing for people coming through the state to see.
Yeah, and trying to, more modern displays where they're easier to keep updated. So when you come, you don't see the exact same thing every time. So we're putting more into making it a little more modular, I guess, where we can have new displays and keep things fresh for those people that return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, with the Mountain Tough connection, elk hunting obviously has been a big part of my life, and it's been transformational for my life. But I think so much of that is how it takes you on these grand adventures. And the elk hunt in itself is awesome, but the places and the adventures it takes you on is, I think, so important to us as humans. I think we're wired for these big adventures. I think we need these big adventures, or our soul kind of starts withering away. And elk hunting gives us this big giant adventure that we can go on that is going to take us into the unknown, and you don't know how it's going to go, and you're going to see a lot of cool things along the way. And so we're always encouraging the Mountain Tough community to find some sort of adventure, take some adventure, make sure you're doing some adventures each and every year, multiple times per year. And elk hunting is just such a great gateway to make sure that's happening.
Yeah, and I even think archery elk hunting specifically, just for the senses that you have to employ to be effective. Like, I think you slow down, I think you listen more, it's more connected because you have to close that distance to so tight. And it's, if you consider it failure not harvesting, I fail a hell of a lot more than I'm successful with my bow. But every encounter that I have is successful to me because it's an incredible experience when you get that close, kind of on the same, on the terms of the elk. If there's one thing that the last thing I will give up is archery elk hunting. They can take a lot of it away. Fishing is getting close, but archery elk hunting is the one thing that I feel the most connected on.
It's incredible. Yeah, and you have the elk bugling, and it's like nothing else.
Life-changing.
And I think we're going to need it more and more. The society is getting more technologically advanced, and life is getting more and more comfortable. And these types of adventures, these types of opportunities, we are going to, I think, require more and more as this technology advances.
Yeah, I was actually on the way into work this morning listening to a group. I apologize, I don't recall the name, but a group started to promote children being disconnected from screens, from digital devices. So, setting aside specific times. I mean, you grew up like I did, like it was a bicycle and just go, you're outside all the time. You look at how that has changed and how like device connected people are growing up. They're really, really missing the true connection. And that's getting out, getting your hands dirty, exploring, whether that, ultimately leads to hunting, hopefully, and taking that responsibility again of harvesting, putting food on your table. It's interesting that, we have groups forming around disconnecting kids from screens. I think it's vitally important, and I applaud it, because missing that connection growing up, I can't fathom it. I don't understand it. And we're all through work connected to these things. We're on them now, but I make a point of certainly leaving it behind every opportunity that I get.
For sure. Yeah. And not only is it teaching you a lot, and you're getting the nature and the vitamin D and the disconnection, but your elk hunting teaches you a lot about self-reliance and, how to take care of yourself when no one else is going to. And I think that's been one of the biggest impacts in my life, is going on those big adventures as like a young man. It makes you really capable later on in life, because you gain all these different little skill sets, and you also kind of gain that never quit mentality, because eventually, just like hunting, if you never quit, something amazing is going to happen. And I think the way you can carry those skills into your family life and your business life, it's priceless.
Without question.
Well, Steve, thanks for jumping on the Mountain Tough show. This has been super fascinating for me. I love hearing the family history and the connection to your father. That's incredible. And the work you guys are doing over there in Missoula is amazing and so important. And so I really honor you guys and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity. Hopefully there's something worth listening to here, but we love the partnership with Mountain Tough. Appreciate all that you guys do. It's partners like you that help make what we do possible. These partnerships are the tide that lifts all boats. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for your continued support of RMEF and our mission. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
What a great conversation with Steve. If you haven't been to RMEF headquarters yet in Missoula, make sure you swing by. As we were chatting about their visitor center is remarkable. The massive bulls they have in there is really cool. And just the exhibits of what's going on, all their habitat projects they're doing for conservation. It's a great place to stop for sure if you're swinging through Montana. And it's a great organization to support. Make sure if you are hunting elk and you don't already support RMEF, that you go to their website and see if you can become a member. As we got into on today's podcast, they are a game-changing conservation organization. So see how you can support those guys. A great one for you to support if you aren't already. And remember, we're always looking for that golden nugget. What can we take away from this episode and apply to our lives right away so that it sticks? The big golden nugget for me on this one was, Steve said it several times on the show, but as we're growing up in our younger years, we're always taking oftentimes from these natural resources, these great places that we get to go. And many of these great places that we get to go in North America, we are standing on shoulders of giants that have created these opportunities for us. And that is especially true when it comes to our public lands. We got into that conversation on today's show that the public lands we have in the United States are like no other place on earth. And we need to do everything we can to protect those places. And we need to do everything we can to find ways to give back. So think about that in your life and what you can do, what your family can do. Steve mentioned several opportunities to help on today's show. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to this channel and leave us a comment. The comments do mean the world to us. They mean the world to me. We love seeing where you guys stand and what you think. And the comments through the algorithm help these episodes get out to help more people. Also, as a Mountain Tough subscriber, this Mountain Tough show is available in the app. So if you're not a subscriber already, make sure you check that out. And as a listener to the show, you can do that for 6 weeks for free with that code MTNPOD.